Hello, my name's Faye. This is Faye's Parallel Stories, and today I want to do the World Book Day tag, which apparently was on the 23rd of April, World Book Day that is. I missed it, but Steve Donahue didn't, who started the tag. I was tagged by the lovely Doris from All D Books, and I thought I'd hop right onto it. I do currently live in Germany, which is the very first question. The first question is, what country do you currently call home, and is it the country you were born in? And yes, I was born in Germany. We did move away when I was 7-8 weeks old. We moved to the UK for a few years. So I do call Germany home. I was born in Stuttgart, which, you know, that's a city in Germany. And currently I live in Berlin. The second question is, how many countries have you visited and did you buy books there? And I feel weirdly embarrassed to say that I think I haven't visited that many countries. I sort of roughly thought about it. I'm only counting countries that I remember, and I wasn't an infant. And I reckon the number is somewhere between 15 and 20. And I'm not trying to be super condescending about saying, oh, I don't know exactly. But you know, you travel through some countries. Europe is not that vast, so you do pass through countries to get to others. And did I buy books there? Well, yes, in some countries I bought loads of books. I tended to spend the summers at my grandparents' place in the UK when I was a child growing up, and we always bought loads of books when I was there, and I would also get to just leave them there. I felt very much at home there. And then I stopped buying books, stopped reading for a really long time, and have only really gotten back into it as an adult, as a postgraduate student, because I didn't have to read for uni that much anymore. So I have started reading again, and now when I travel, and especially if I'm somewhere by myself, I do make it a point to find bookshops in those countries, and I do also like buying a book there just because it's something that reminds me of the place. Also, it's, you know, you end up buying books that you don't have on your radar, that aren't exhibited in the bookstores in your own country, in the own bookshops that you tend to go to. So I do make a point to do that. Also, it's just a lovely way to explore a city. I am not one who is where am I going with this? I'm a vegetarian, so with some countries that means going to certain restaurants is not that interesting, and that's sort of very much a staple thing to do for me when I'm somewhere by myself. If I'm traveling with people, I'm happy-go-lucky, easygoing, but by myself I like to spend a lot of time in bookshops. That's a long-winded question to saying, yes, now I do actually like buying books in the places that I go to. The countries that come to mind immediately are Hungary. I was in Budapest for a few days by myself and had great fun discovering the bookshops. Also trying to find books in translation in that case, because I unfortunately do not speak Hungarian. And that was great. And I went to Scotland not too long ago, and that was also really fun just because all the bookshops were so picturesque, and looking for books there was super fun. Question 3 is, how well is the world represented in your bookcases? And I think the answer is poorly, because it could be represented so much better. The next question kind of feeds into that. The only thing that I guess is, you know, slightly unusual about my bookcases is that I do have a few German books on there. That isn't surprising because I'm German. The weird thing possibly is that it's still very much the minority of all my books, because I do prefer to read English books. My dad's English. I did grow up with both languages, and somewhere along the way I stopped reading German. My complete studies were in English, and I feel more comfortable reading English, and especially because I only really started enjoying reading again once I allowed myself to read purely for pleasure. I stopped forcing myself to read any books that I found sort of clunky. And I hate to say this, but my native tongue, German, I think can be unnecessarily wordy. But aside from that, I think my books don't represent the world ideally, because the next question is how many works in translation do you currently have? The question excludes the canon, but I'm not even going to go into that too much because I just didn't look at some of the classics, whatever. And can you see that? I pulled out the odd book. Well, I pulled out the odd book, but you can't see them because I ended up pulling out 8 books, I think, that I was sure were works of translation. There's a French one, Italian one, Portuguese one, Hungarian one, French, did I mention that? So very, very few. On my bookshelves, I have a bit over 200 books, so that's not a good ratio. I even think, sadly, it's quite representative of my reading of translated fiction on the whole. So this is not just a biased representation because for some reason I read loads of translated fiction on like digital, Kindle, phone, whatever paths. No, I think this is actually quite representative of the fact that I read very little translated fiction. The next question, or prompt rather, is to tell you something weird, a weird fact about my country. And I'm sure there's plenty of peculiar things about Germany and the Germans, but I thought I would maybe sort of give you just 2 tidbits of my life in Germany that do pertain to literature and reading, because that's what we're here for. And I thought it was curious to find out that the Grimm brothers hold the 10th and 11th spot for most translated authors. So the Grimm brothers, of course, wrote all the fairy tales that are so well known. And I do not have a recollection of reading any of them. A lot of the fairy tales are just ones we grow up with and sort of magically know, but I never owned a copy of Gebrüder Grimm's Märchen, and I think I will remedy that at some point. The second weird fact, bookish German fact, is again more one of my own experience, and that is that reading translated fiction in my classes in high school was a really weird experience because we read Shakespeare in German, which I thought was a really weird pick. For one, because there is loads of German fiction that we could have read, and I'm not trying to say reading Shakespeare is not a valuable lesson to teenagers, sure, but surely it makes more sense having either the older kids read Shakespeare in English or just stop bothering with it and giving them some kind of German play to read. I don't know. I always thought that was really, really weird. We read Hamlet in the German translation, and I always thought that was super bizarre. Of course, in my theatre-loving, actor-wannabe teenage years, I didn't hate that we read this because my second name is in fact Ophelia. Yes, I have slightly dramatic parents, and yeah, I was all on that, so I was always the first who wanted to talk about the tragic role of Ophelia, of course. The 6th question is whether there is a work of world fiction on my shelves, and as I am not entirely sure how to interpret world fiction, I just pulled out one book that is a book of translated fiction that I have yet to read, and that is Blindness by José Saramago, who is a Portuguese author, and this is a science fiction novel, which I think would be a cool way to tap into something like this. It's not a book that I am going to pick up any day too soon, because the whole plot is an epidemic that sweeps the world, rendering everyone blind, and I don't think I want to read about an epidemic at the moment. But nevertheless, I do think reading dystopian visions, science fiction, well, scientific as well, I guess, science fiction from other countries is really, really fascinating, because so much about sci-fi is exercising our mind to imagine what the world could be like, and I do think it's really valuable to have different lenses on that view, and this one is a Portuguese one. And then finally, the seventh prompt is to tag people, and of course I want to do that. I'm going to tag 3 people just to, you know, give a little spread, because we are requested to not tag people from our own country. So I thought I'd give a shout out to Hannah Hart's Books 6, who's based in Oklahoma, I believe, from online stalking her YouTube profile. And I thought it would be fun to have her do this tag, because she went through a little YouTube slump, I believe, and is back. So maybe she feels like doing a tag. I also want to tag Nalina, I believe, who is called Beautiful Dauntless. That's her YouTube handle, and she's a Hungarian booktuber who I think will just like spread the word and have other have a different country, you know, join in with the fun. Her channel is also in Hungarian, so maybe she says really, really awful things, but I don't think so. And I think it would be cool if this tag made it from the English speaking to the Hungarian speaking booktube universe. And then finally, I thought Julia's Booked Time from Australia would like to do the tag. I just stumbled across her because she's also joining in with the Springathon, Readathon, that's currently taking place, and that's centered all about nature writing. I think our reading interests could be quite similar. And I'm always shocked, actually, to see how many books Australian booktubers talk about that I've never heard about. They don't seem to always make it to the German bookshops, and maybe also not into my personal echo chamber that I shout into. So that would be really valuable, just selfishly for me, if she did the tag. But anyway, feel free to do this tag, obviously, if you like the questions, if you like talking about all the different countries and the roles they play in our book experience. Thanks for tagging me, Doris, and I will see you very soon. Bye, guys.